All right, welcome back, Generals and Admirals. This is General Johnny, and today we are going over dead center. So, I've made one of these before, but basically what this is it is a map analysis to give you just the bare basics on each of the maps. So my goal is to hit every single map in Broken Arrow from start to finish, as far as what maps they have on multiplayer and how they're set up with the objectives. And we'll go through kind of the basic strategy. So we'll go over the basic lanes that people tend to fall into, and then we'll also go through kind of the agenda today is we'll go through big picture what the strategy is. Now, this is a little bit difficult. I will be looking at it through the lens of PTE and kind of how to play it that way. But the lanes really don't change, and the terrain itself isn't that crazy of a difference either. So we're just going to kind of go through where the spawn points are. We're going to go through the big picture overview of the map. Then we're going to go actually into the game and, point out those lanes, point out the micro terrain for each of those lanes. And we'll also hit the north and south side. And so I'm just going to call this the north side will be the blue with the A on the top, and then the south side will be with B on the bottom. So we'll go through all that and more today on this episode of General Johnny Strategy. Again, dead center map analysis. But before we get kicked off, please, if you gain any value or have any interest in Broken Arrow strategy content, I do a lot of different strategy content across RTSs and just in general. If you guys enjoy that kind of stuff, like, subscribe. General Johnny Strategy. Also, consider supporting us on Patreon, where I also provide additional tactics and strategy, early releases, a bunch of other benefits. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get this one kicked off. So real quick, I just wanted to go over the map statistics off of BA Armory. So we're actually are partnered with them in creating this content. So I will go across pretty much all of these maps listed here, which really should be all the maps that they currently have. But just looking at the statistics, it actually isn't that bad. Dead Center looks like it's the most balanced map as in terms of win rate based off of these sides. So I don't know if there's a breakdown for the individual countries and kind of which side they're playing. But yeah, because it says non-nation specific. So as you can see here, this is the most balanced map in terms of, north and south side. So that's actually really interesting to note. And then the other thing I just wanted to show here is the maps. So they have the dead center map, and you can kind of pull up and get some ranges on this as well. Kind of a neat little tool there, but we'll go into the actual game now. So this is the dead center map, and just so you can kind of categorize this for yourself, you do have a total, I'm just now noticing this, but 3 ground spawns. Really, it kind of seems like 2 ground spawns. All right, you do have 1 air and 1 helicopter ground spawn. I would classify this as a medium map, and there are a total of 10 points on this map. So especially if you're playing the PTE, you really just need to have 6 of those points. And pretty much the way this map works out is you are given, I like to say given, but it's not really, but so you start out with pretty much 4 points, all right, and then you are fighting over the other, the 1 point in the middle, okay, and then also you can be fighting over E, so basically E and F, all right, so those are your 2 points, all right, that you're fighting over on both sides. I think a lot of the action typically really E and F, but a lot of times, depending on how well you are from the north side, you'll be fighting over F. This is an 8x8 map, so 36 square kilometers. I think actually each of these grid squares is 2 kilometers, so what is that, 72 square kilometers throughout the map. So this, I would classify this as a medium map. However, towards out on the flanks, it can feel like a pretty large map, and towards the middle, it can feel like a very small map. So, and the spawns themselves are about medium distance from most of the action. So that's why I considered this a medium, maybe a medium large size map. So we'll just go through it left to right, big picture. Again, just looking at the map, you have 10 points from left to right, north, from the north perspective. All right, or from the south perspective, you have point C on the far left flank, okay, and point I, Alpha, or India, Alpha, and Golf are all on that north side. And then you're also, I would say, the last guaranteed point, or kind of contested but guaranteed on your side, that you should be guaranteed. You should be, if you're bringing the fight to the other side, you should be fighting over F, but the last point is echoed in the dead center of the map. All right. And then from the south side, all right, you have Hotel from left to right, Hotel, Foxtrot, Bravo, Juliet, and Delta. Okay, so your flank points are going to be Hotel and Delta, and your center point that you're going to be fighting over or defending, if you're going to be defensive, is going to be Foxtrot, but offensively will be Echo. All right, so you're pretty much guaranteed Bravo and Juliet here. All right, so that's kind of the big picture overview. The interesting part about this map is it is not completely symmetrical. I mean, not that all the maps are symmetrical, but the flank points really make it unsymmetrical or non-symmetrical. And then depending on in the center of the map, I would say just the whole thing really isn't symmetrical when you start looking at the micro terrain. So without further ado, again, I believe in the vanilla version, it's going to be 6 of the points. All right, that's going to give you 1 flag on the objectives. Okay, and then obviously 7, you're going to get 2, and then 8 of the points, you're going to get 3 full flags. All right, but because we're going to be focusing on PT, remember, you just need 6 points. So if you're fighting from the south side, the most effective point to probably fight over is going to be Echo, okay, from the south side. From the north side, so the blue side here, the most effective point to grab is going to be Foxtrot. You can also work Delta. Delta is one of those points that can be pretty vulnerable, and I would say it's less vulnerable than, let's say, the south side or the Charlie flank position. All right, so without further ado, let's go hop into the game. I'll show you each of the lanes. Actually, I can show you the lanes right here. All right, so from the north side, you have those 2 ground spawn points. So really, you're gonna have, or 3 ground spawn points. So you're gonna have 3 primary lanes. So from left to right, you have the 1, 2, 3. Okay, and obviously the top left spawn is going to pretty much be in control of Charlie. So they're going to approach onto Charlie. Then you're going to have 3 players playing that middle lane onto Alpha. 1 player will really focus on India. 1 player, and really India to Echo. Okay, 1 player will focus on Alpha to Echo, and then on to Foxtrot. And then the last player will go from Alpha, Golf, and then they can put pressure onto Foxtrot and Juliet. So they can get really confusing. Again, there's so many different ways to play dead center on this map, there's just so many different ways to play, but generally speaking, that's kind of your middle 5 lanes. Okay, and then on the far right or east side, with that last ground spawn, your lane will be onto Delta. However, you're going to really just screen that right flank. If you want to double up, there is a strategy where you double up onto Delta. You put a ton of pressure onto Juliet from, Golf to Juliet. However, this is kind of non-standard. But I would say the standard setup for this is you're going to screen on that right side for Delta, okay? And then you're just going to help as much out as possible, secure the flank, and then, secure Golf and the right flank of Golf, and then help put pressure onto Juliet. It is just really hard to take over Delta. Keep in mind, right, that the enemy has this option to resupport and resupply onto Delta, so you don't want to get too overextended. So from the southern perspective, however, we're going to go through that real quick and kind of look at the 3 lanes there. So from west to east, Delta, you're really just going to do the opposite thing, right? So you can put pressure on Charlie. I would say it's easier to put pressure on Charlie because you have this kind of option, right? And we'll speak into it a little bit more when we can see the micro terrain a little bit better. But you do have the option to pressure Charlie from this left lane, but this left lane will really have this hotel, okay? They'll be responsible for securing hotel, and then westward, okay, from the south perspective. The middle lane obviously would take this middle ground spawn. they will go up and, you know, they'll kind of share responsibilities of hotel, but really the three should be focusing on pressuring. You can do two, really, okay, so one kind of to the left onto almost India, but not really. There's a wood line here up past Echo to the left or west of Echo. You can have one really pressure down the middle. Also have Foxtrot, okay, so that third player should really be focusing on Foxtrot. Now there's, again, a few different ways to play this. You can play very defensive on Foxtrot if you're doing this, but I think to be more offensive, you're going to want to go Foxtrot to Golf and then double basically Echo, all right, so that will kind of put the best pressure from the south side. And then your last lane, obviously they'll be approaching from here, but they will be pretty much responsible for Bravo, Juliet, Delta. They'll share a little bit of responsibility with the fourth lane, but really they're going to be establishing onto Delta, okay? And then they're going to be securing pretty much this whole entire line. And again, counter screening or just screening, securing the right flank. Same deal as the first lane on the west side, right? Is just kind of securing this entire flank. So, this is called dead center for a very good reason, because all the fighting will inevitably end up on the dead center. So without further ado, we'll go into the actual map and start talking about you know, what this looks like on a micro terrain kind of analysis of these lanes. But remember, 3 basic lanes. There are 3 players playing the center from each side, and then there's 1 player playing the flank from each side as well. Alright, so here we are, dead center. This is just going to be a skirmish match. Obviously, there are AI here, so do my best to kind of work around them, but I typically, at least from the south side, like to go to Foxtrot. Alright, so again, we're going to have those 3 lanes we were talking about. You're going to have lane 1. It's going to be really from the south side to Charlie, okay? And remember, you're going to be primarily screening, but there are a lot of options to kind of pressure kind of these different ways. So really, it would look more like that. All right, and then you can pressure onto it from there. So that is 1 lane in itself. The second lane, which will really subdivide into 3 lanes, will be straight down the middle from the south side. And the last lane will be, again, over to Delta. And keep in mind that you will be in charge of not necessarily capturing or holding Bravo and Juliet, but, I mean, those are kind of consequential on that line to the south that you are kind of responsible for. So, again, if you're on the flanks, you have a lot of responsibility here, and then you also have a lot of responsibility here, and then it also extends further out this way for Delta. So that's pretty much everything from the middle portion there. Okay, we talk about from the big overview of everything. Now talking about a little bit of the middle portion here. So that middle lane, lane 3, can kind of be subdivided. You can have 2 people on E and then 1 person on F for that middle lane. You can also swap it where you have 2 people on F, 1 person on E, and then you can also pressure onto, I believe that's Charlie past there. Okay, let's switch over to the other side and kind of look at it from the other perspective. So from the northern perspective, or what I'm at least going to call the north. So from the left side, you're going to have really lane 1, which is going to be pressuring, but really screening if you want to be conservative, this left side. All right, then you're going to have the middle lane. All right, it's going to be right there down to the dead center portion of the map, and then you're going to have the third lane, which is going to be over to Charlie. If you are on the center lane, there's a few different ways you can attack this. You can have one pretty much go India and pressure onto what is over there. You can't really see it, hotel. You can have one go from Echo onto Foxtrot, and then you can have one go from Golf onto Foxtrot, or subsequently pressure onto Juliet. But those are your main 3 lanes. Again, remember the flank sides here are going to be primarily, look at this huge amount of space that the Charlie lane is responsible for, and then also equally as huge, really this far left flank is in charge of these 2 areas. So I kind of advise the way to play this is to use helicopters to secure those flanks, get some recon out, really spread your forces as lightly as possible with QRF as far as helicopters, so that you're not spending as many points, right, securing those flanks instead, right? So looking at, again, we'll just kind of go through the micro of each lanes. So on Charlie lane, as you can see here, you'll be approaching, and there's a lot of different areas. This is kind of the wooded area that I was talking about that you can kind of approach onto, but really you're establishing a line here, all right, and there's also a good line to establish there. You're gonna help kind of split hotel, right? So you're gonna help out with hotel as much as possible, with maybe that third player that's pressuring onto E. They're gonna have a lot of kind of units going in and out of this. You shouldn't be solely responsible for it, because you do have so much to cover over here, but there is potential to pressure onto Charlie. If you can pop smoke and you can kind of obscure yourself here, this isn't a terrible place to attack onto Charlie. Just know that, as you can see, even the AI is going to be sending people from India. So again, hundreds different ways to play this, but generally speaking, that is kind of what you want to look for. You can see these woods, so like this would be your really line here. Anything past that, you're really past this lane or road right here, is kind of overextending yourself. It does not necessarily overextend yourself going into these woods, like I said, through this direction, just because you can see how far they have to approach over here just to resupport, right? So it's pretty much equidistance as long as you're using this kind of major intersection as a point of reference. Also, keep in mind, they're going to have a lot of artillery. The enemy is going to have a lot of artillery and ADA set up in these locations, and then on this hilltop in the back. So interesting to note, you do have the opportunity to kind of build pressure on there. A lot of opportunity to kind of helicopter flank if that's kind of your thing. But going into the center lane, so really where the main action is, and I don't know if this is going to work. Oh, I can't even have it because I don't have the nuke. But I will say the biggest kind of strategy that you can do on this map, and it really works better from the south side, is to nuke right here. So literally nuke on this location, right? And I promise you, you will kill so many units if done right, if you seed properly, if your team is coordinated, you can really dominate this. And I would plan to seed and nuke in phase 1 and in phase 3, right? Probably towards the end of phase 1 along with a push, and then at the beginning of phase 3 along with a push. But as you can see here, you're going to have those 3 players kind of pushing up into Echo, and we'll just start out kind of with hotel. So you do have this section of buildings, which is a pretty key piece of micro terrain, and then you also have these woods here, which is a pretty key micro terrain. So these woods provide the opportunity to have Recon and ATGMs from the north side that kind of really make or deny any access from here, and then also they really keep in check this whole entire area. Keep in mind, you do have these buildings, so it's kind of hard to shoot through those, but they actually have a pretty good line of sight into this area here. So as those 3 players are really going to be using these two roads up into the center, like it's going to be difficult to fight around this. Now that means that you can really pre-designate some fires there and what have you. Now what makes it kind of advantageous from the south side is that you do have these woods. Now don't over rely on the woods, however, because a lot of the times, especially if you're facing Russia, they will be able to artillery strike into these woods and destroy a lot of your stuff if you're over relying onto that. But they also have this avenue of approach, right? So this second set of buildings here is pretty good with lining infantry, right? So you have like a base right here where you can hide infantry behind, and then you can kind of push up into here. And if you get the enemy kind of stuck in this area, then you can start, artillery striking into that area as well. So interesting kind of to note. You will, from the south side at least, you should be semi-guaranteed this Foxtrot position. Important to note as far as micro terrain, okay, so these two buildings on Echo, you have to be careful, right? So if you're from the north side, it might be really tempting to occupy these buildings, but notice the line of sight, right? So you can really get shot from anywhere over here, from all these different positions, and what ends up happening is those guys are so exposed that they get killed really easily. So don't think just because you can take these buildings, the best way to defend it is really to occupy these buildings in the back, and then like I said, probably occupy this this set of woods, this building in the back, and then just kind of hold Echo strategically through that kind of process. All right, so moving back out more onto Foxtrot. So you're gonna, from Foxtrot in the south position, you're gonna help establish this line, and hopefully you can put a little bit of pressure onto Golf, maybe through here and here. Now your big hurdle is going to be the concentration of enemy there, right? So we'll look at it from the north side a little bit, but that's the main difficulty. But also from the north side, this is pretty difficult to come down this road. If you're playing this right, you have a clear setup here where you can shoot all the way down there. You can also, occupy this building, kind of control these woods, and really the dead center area is just a meat grind because all these places can be kind of pre-designated. And I'd say the big ones to pre-designate are here in the woods, here in the buildings right behind Echo, and then here right past this main, I guess it's like a hospital or maybe a school. Those are the three areas, and if you can see here, the nuke, right, would affect pretty much all of those areas, and that one major avenue approach that three enemies are probably going to be supplying themselves, right? So moving on to kind of the right flank from the south perspective, right? So you can see here, even with the AI and one less person, they're able to hold it because, it's just that close to the spawn. You are responsible for a lot of terrain over on this right side, right? So this wood line actually is pretty hard to assault along with this here. So really the only wood line your enemy is going to have is going to be this area here. These wood lines are a little bit too thin, right, to use effectively. So really it's just going to be this wood line. But your main avenue of approach feeds through here, which is really vulnerable again to all of this wood line and these buildings here. So I would say, again, spread yourself out with helicopters to cover the right flank, and then have your infantry, ATGMs, and then have your artillery and whatever else you're going to be supporting with kind of in the rear here. So as they kind of have right there, right? So that is kind of the perspective, and I might have to restart the game because it looks like they're going to put us into sudden death right here. So we had to reset this real quick, but we were just going over the micro terrain for the south side. So again, on your lane 1 on the south side, this enemy unit would really be kind of screening over here, this entire area. Okay, so I would use helicopters to kind of cover this area over here, maybe some long range recon, and then you can again utilize this main wood section here, the forest there. What you don't want is the enemy or the northern side making its way up here or even establishing themselves in these woods, right? The more ground if you give up this kind of line here, it's not going to be good, because then they're going to be able to exert a lot of pressure onto G through a lot of different options. They can come through here, and then they can even see around to the rear and your friendly backline. So again, part of securing that backline or securing that flank as your G flank or left flank for the south side. So looking over here in the middle where the main action is going to go, kind of the micro terrain. So like I said, a lot of people will kind of hold this area back here along with this wood line, and that'll be able to kind of hold Echo, right? You can also have the option to kind of push into hotel itself through kind of that avenue of approach, but I think the main avenues of approach are going to be onto Foxtrot. You really want to secure Foxtrot, and your overarching goal would to be really make your way into Juliet and unlock this kind of avenue approach in the center. So if that comes from your number 2 player, so think about it like this: number 2, 3, and 4, and 3 would be really helping secure down Echo, 4 would be helping secure these woods, India, and then put pressure onto H if applicable. And then your number 2 player could go into Gulf and it can also pressure on Foxtrot. So, you know, these 3 players will be working pretty in depth, and, you know, you're gonna have to adjust to what the enemy does here. But that's kind of the basic strategy there. You can also pre-designate, like I said, because if you push them up to Foxtrot, their only option is to hold that wood line, because if that wood line is given up, they're going to lose here. So, you know, if you back them into that corner and kind of make them do that, then you can pre-designate your fires. You can also pre-designate fires here, because you know that's where a lot of their support units are going to go. Keep in mind, like, this area right here is hard at first to break if they have it occupied with a bunch of infantry, but once you break that initial line and you're into Juliet, you can establish your infantry, and it really makes it hard to resupply and recapture onto Juliet and Foxtrot. You're opening up a lot of different avenues of approach and a lot of different angles of attack, so really important to note there. That's pretty much everything in the middle. Now, as far as Charlie is interesting. I won't talk too much on India, because India is really controlled by this wood line, okay, and then also whoever has Charlie. So as long as Charlie is secure and this wood line is secure, you know, there is a slim avenue approach that they can go into here, but really you can see how open it is on this area, so it makes it a little bit difficult to do so, right? So looking over onto Charlie, again, the idea is going to be to really screen all the way from here to outside, right, of Charlie. Really, this should be probably pushed up, so like right there, right? You would want to kind of hold a line here across all, you know, the woods and that same road. It is really hard without, you know, smoke and a lot of other assets to push, you know, through here. This is the other main avenue approach for the enemy, here and then here. So you have about 4 different avenues of approaches, and I would say this is probably the easier, because there's so many avenues of approach, is to push C, in my opinion, as opposed to the other flank. I don't think there's as many avenues of approach to hit Delta. But that's kind of the idea there. This area right here is actually really good, in my opinion, because you can kind of anchor yourself in these buildings and use it as a base of operation. And again, remember, a lot of your support assets will be you know, over here, so you have like 1, 2, and 3 area to kind of hold it down. And there's also a lot more options back here, as you can see. The AI is setting up there, but the main thing, again, is to kind of establish yourself, maybe with some helicopters, maybe with a little bit of recon, and lock down this far avenue approach, and then start looking at this wood line, and then obviously the easiest to defend is going to be Charlie itself. But that's really everything as far as the macro and micro terrain analysis for this map. Again, you can kind of see, look at the AI kind of clumped up here. So imagine a nuke being dropped right there, okay, in this battle alone would pretty much kill like 2,000 or 3,000 points. I know it's AI, but you know, you would kill like 2,000 or 3,000 points here, and once you nuke that, you're able to push straight onto Echo. You're able to pressure, you know, even onto Gulf, okay, and then you can even pressure onto India. And what ends up happening is, you know, the enemy's going to be scrambling to reinforce, right? You're going to have a massive material advantage, and they're going to be scrambling to reinforce really just down this 1 or even 2 avenues of approach from this area. So that's why I think the other side, this top side here that we started out, has a much bigger advantage than, you know, the south side, or I forget if it's the north side that we went over just now. So again, if you enjoy strategy content, if you enjoy Broken Arrow content, I will be doing a map analysis kind of on every single map that Broken Arrow has. This is dead center. Really so many different ways to play this, and I don't want you guys thinking like, hey, in terms of lane brain, right? But this is the basic strategy, and I'm sure there's a bunch of different other strategies. This map is super susceptible to kind of clogging up this avenue approach again. I've really seen it played really well against this side here, right? This avenue approach coming here can get bombed, and it can get heli attacked, and I've even seen a lot of strategies where you can throw your enemy straight into sudden death. So very interesting map and all. But if you guys enjoy this kind of content, broken arrow content, strategy content, please drop a like, drop a comment, let me know what map you want done next. Again, we are in partnership with BARmory.net, and we also have Patreon. So if you guys want more of the strategy content, you want early access, and you just want to be a better supporter, follow us on Patreon. There's plenty of free options on there too, but be a supporter if you like this kind of content. And thank you so much for watching. I will see you, General and Admirals, next time.